We're back to the Neil Haley Show, and excited to welcome my co-host Paul Hollis, author of the Hollow Man series and Seniors Publishing and all these other businesses. How are you, Paul? And I know you're excited about our guest from Australia, right?
Absolutely. We have Paul Rushworth Brown with us today. He is a fantastic uh, historical fiction writer. He has a trilogy out just now, right? The last book is out now, and he's going to tell us all about the whole trilogy there. So welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Hello, Neil.
How are you? All right. So let's talk about how this all started for you in writing. Kind of explain it to me.
Okay, so about 3 years ago, well, I've always been a history nerd. About 3 years ago, I started delving into my family history and traced my furthest away ancestor back in 1590 in a small village in Yorkshire called Haworth. And a year later, I thought, who was this guy, this Thomas Rushworth from 1590? So I actually did a lot of research and I wanted to know. He was a peasant living on the moors of Yorkshire, and I wanted to know how he actually lived. And then from that research, I actually turned that into sort of like a whodunit, 1590, and a little bit of romance, a little bit of spice, a little bit of very, very authentic and accurate and researched accurately and to the point. And that was the birth of Skulduggery, the first novel in the trilogy.
Absolutely. So let's go. Once you decided to write it, what kind of gave you the ideas for your book?
Well, a lot of people ask me that because, and it's like when I write, I never do any planning or anything. I just start writing, and then having a sort of like crazy imagination as I do. Just one thing led to another, and this Thomas Rushworth had a family, and basically what I've done is I've built up a whole historical, I suppose, whodunit and thriller around his family, which I traced Thomas Rushworth, but I really didn't know much about who his family was. But he was a copy holder on the moors of Yorkshire, and I've been there, and my God, what a difficult place it would have been to live back in the 16th century. So I don't know if I answered your question then.
No, you definitely did. Like creating characters, how does that work when you create characters and develop characters?
That's something after the third novel, I actually went back and I rewrote Skulduggery, and it's something that you definitely get better and better at as Paul would know as you continue writing over a period of 3 years. But how I develop them is just just from Tommy Rushworth or Thomas Rushworth. He'd have a little bit of me in him. He'd have a little bit of my father. Obviously, having a good imagination helps. And they just develop with the story. Like Tommy Rushworth is just a young boy, and his father dies from consumption. And he's basically left with the tenancy of this 10-acre plot that he has to go to the steward of the manor and try and keep. And but basically, you see a young man who's trying to survive on the moors of Yorkshire. See a young man develop from a boy into a man over that period of time, and with that, there's a romance, and there's a really interesting marriage, because once I started researching the way they do marriage back in the 16th century is totally different customs and that to obviously what we do today. So that's a very, very interesting component of the story.
What is your hope for the trilogy of your 3 books?
Oh, HBO. It's just made for HBO.
Great.
You know,
Great.
I mean, the interesting thing is, like with things like Poldark and Vikings and those types of shows, people love those sort of like that type of miniseries, and the trilogy itself is actually, I mean, it deserves to be on the screen without sort of like I suppose bragging or anything. It's a story that deserves to be on the screen. So I'm just waiting. It's waiting, mate.
You got to wait for sure, and the process and getting it out there, and so ultimately looking at to get it on screen is such a important part of the process. And your fans are what is the feedback with your fans that have read all three books?
Well, the third one comes out on November 22nd, right? So it's being splashed across social media. I only just got the final formatted copy yesterday. So that comes out on November 22nd. But it's eagerly awaited. From had a advanced readers copy sent out to a number of people a number of readers, and they loved it. They can't wait for it to get out there.
Great.
All right. Well, it's such an interesting thing. Paul, any questions?
No, this is, I mean, it's a fascinating series. I've talked to Paul before, and it's definitely a series on my list to read. It's historical fiction, as you know, with mine is closer historical fiction, but I love historical fiction. So, and Paul has done a terrific job on actually putting his whole family in the books and moving them forward through time.
Yeah. So the third one, the second one's called Winter Red, or sorry, Red Winter Journey, and the third one's called Dream of Courage. And I'm really excited about Dream of Courage because it's more of a thriller. It's a thriller set in the early 1700s, and that's probably a little bit more, I suppose, progressive than the other two, where the story actually takes place in sort of like larger cities. And obviously back in that time in England, there was cutthroats, there was pirates, there was highwaymen. So there's a touch of that in it, and there's a very brutal character in there by the name of Jacob Wilding, and I'm very interested in seeing how people react to this brutish fellow.
Great.
All right, great. Where's the best place people can find information on you, purchase your book, and learn more about you?
So there's a website. Probably the easiest way to get in there is to do a search on Google, Haworth, HAWORTH / Skulduggery / Australia. And there's even a free copy of Skulduggery on there for people to go to the website.
All right, people need to check that out so then they can go and read one of them, right? And then get to then buy all the rest of the books and read the whole series for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, well, appreciate it, sir. Thanks again.
See you guys.
You're listening and watching the Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.